Hi there, welcome to another episode of Fluffnpuff Pastry Baking Basics. Today we're going to be going over the differences and uses for core ingredients that you'll most commonly find in baking recipes. I decided to make this video because I felt that a lot of people were telling me that they were intimidated to even be baking because they didn't understand how different ingredients affect each other. I hope you guys find this video helpful today, and if you do, please don't forget to subscribe to the Fluffnpuff Pastry channel. That way it helps me keep making great content for you guys. Let's talk about butter. Now, I always use unsalted butter in almost all of my recipes. That way I have more control over how much salt is actually going into my recipes. Some people like to substitute shortening for butter. So when and why would you use shortening instead of butter? Well, shortening withstands a lot more heat, so say it's a hot summer day and you're making a wedding cake, you'll want to use more shortening in your buttercream so that it stands up to the blazing heat. Whereas butter will easily melt, but it also has that quality of melting in your mouth. Whereas shortening, when you eat it, it doesn't really melt as well and it leaves a film in your mouth. As far as temperature goes for butter, most people find it pretty tricky to know whether you should have it at room temperature or have it cold. I would say whenever you're making cakes or buttercreams, things that you want to mix very well together, you want to have it at room temperature. Whereas if you're making pastries like pie dough, you want the butter to stay very cold, especially while you're working. That way it gives you that flaky texture in the end when you have large chunks of butter that end up melting. The structure of a baking recipe starts with the type of flour. Every flour has its own strength level, and the strength level depends on the protein content. For those of you that want to know specifically how much protein is in each of these flours, I've listed it for you. So, with all-purpose flour, we have a higher protein content, and that gives you a more firm, dense, final result for the product. If you're using pastry flour or cake flour, which has a lower protein content, you would have a fluffier or a lighter, more delicate baked good. All-purpose flour could be used for anything from cookies to cakes. However, it does sacrifice the quality of your final product. That is why I prefer to use specific flours depending on what I'm making. Pastry flour could be used for pastries, pie dough, biscuits, muffins, and cookies. Cake flour could be used for cakes and all other delicate baked goods. There are alternatives to using these type of flours. For instance, you can use almond flour or coconut flour if you're making a gluten-free recipe. I saved the best ingredient for last, which is sugars. Here I have granulated sugar, fine granulated sugar, powdered sugar, and brown sugar. Granulated sugar is the most common kind of sugar you'll be using in your baking recipes. Super fine sugar will be used when you have a product with a weak structure, and so it needs that core structure of granulated sugar to still rise, but it can't have anything too heavy weighing it down. Powdered sugar is also known as icing sugar, and it's known for smoothness, so you would want to use it in buttercream or icings. Brown sugar is basically less processed white sugar, and that gives it a characteristic taste of caramel and molasses. So you would use it in products where the color doesn't really matter and you're looking for that specific brown sugar taste. I hope you guys find this video useful today, and for the new bakers, I hope that it would make you less intimidated by baking. Maybe that way you guys would try out making some of the desserts in my other videos. If you guys like this video today, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys next time on another episode of Fluffnpuff Pastry Baking Basics.